All right, hey everyone, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Untitled Personal Podcast Project. It's a little bit of a project that I put together to kind of analyze and continue the conversation that we see in our Facebook feeds on a regular basis. And so for this inaugural episode, I'm joined with our guinea pigs and that kind of mean guests. The first one up is Matt Misenhimer, is the John Adams to my Thomas Jefferson. Hi Matt, how's it going?
Howdy, how's it going?
I'm doing well. This is kind of exciting. Thank you for joining us a little bit here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you stand? Who are you?
I think first, I'm a Christian. Second, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I don't believe almost anything in the media. So that's pretty much me.
This is going to be an awesome episode.
And I'm also computer science. I'm a programmer when I'm actually working. I've been working for a little while just because it's better for me to not work right now. So, where'd you go?
Nice little choice there.
Yeah.
Well, second up, we have Brian Parra. He's actually one of the few witnesses that I was, in fact, a Boy Scout for about 3 months.
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So tell us a little about where you are. Where do you stand? How do people get to know you?
Wow. So I am. I mean, if we're starting with the big philosophical stuff, so I guess you could call me a free-thinking humanist. I tend to be politically not neutral. I'm definitely liberal, but I just have thoughts about random things constantly, sort of very pointed realizations about mundane things that, like, wouldn't the whole world be better if we fixed this little thing? Gosh, I guess I'm an English teacher by education. I'm an IT guy and an audio guy by that's what life sent me down the paths of doing, and an avid Facebook commenter. Probably describes me. Or that's how I guess that's my credentials to get on this show.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like we all we like to bring on, or I like to bring on guests, people that I follow in my feed who bring in more conversation than just sharing a meme and seeing if it sticks. And you both definitely fit that mold. I guess I should give a little background about myself. I am a web developer, digital strategist. Basically, I'm on the internet for a living. So that kind of works out for me. Politically, religiously, spiritually, I'm pretty much like, I try to stay Switzerland, but sometimes every so often I'll invade Poland. That might not be the best way to to open up the conversation, but I just kind of I equally am kind of that open thinker. People call me sometimes as an insult a relativist. And yeah, sure, I definitely take on that truth to me is relative, and there's that. How's that for a stance to start off the day? Switzerland, but sometimes invading other countries. So let's just get going. We'll kind of start off a little bit of a warm up, some softballs here. There was an article that MythBusters had shared about the hardest tongue twister in the world, and there was a lot of comments, a lot of back and forth about what that might be, and so I wanted to see if you guys maybe can try out some tongue twisters here. Who wants to go first? Who's going to be the lucky one?
I'm terrible, so I'll go first.
Oh, done deal. Okay, so your tongue twister is pad kid poured curd pulled cod.
Pad kid poured a cold pod? I don't... What?
Pad kid poured curd pulled cod.
I don't... Are those words?
Oh yeah, just random words we kind of threw together. We start off with the hard ones here. Well, okay, we'll do one that's a little bit easy to memorize, so you can do it the 5 times, because you got to do it the 5 times, or it just doesn't count. We'll go with this. Is the sock cutter related to the sheet slitter?
Is the sock cutter related to the... What is it?
Sheet slitter.
Is the sock cutter related to the sheet slitter? Did I do it?
Yes.
All right.
1 point for Max. The points don't matter. We're going to steal that from another TV show. All right, Brian. Are you ready?
All right.
Are you
Hit me. I got bourbon in my hands. So.
I'm as ready as ever. Let's see what we got. Let's see. I want to give you this hard one, but I'm gonna do the hard one later. How about boy gargoyle, girl gargoyle? See if you can say that fast 5 times.
Boy gargoyle. I can't even say it slow once. Boy gargoyle, girl gargoyle. Boy gargoyle, girl gargoyle. Boy gargoyle, girl gargoyle. Boy, yeah, forget it. That's it's not happening.
All right. Okay. So this is the hard one. This is the one that, like, even when I think about it, it's really hard to even say in my head. Matt, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. The word is Irish wristwatch.
Wow. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. I'm gonna start talk. I can't even speak normal now.
It totally destroys your brain. Your brain is completely destroyed, even just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Brian, here we go. Let's see if you can do it.
Who, me? You got it, Greg.
Oh, you want me to do it?
Oh no. Okay, yeah. It's my turn. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. I feel like when I say that, my mouth just refuses to follow with the instructions of my brain. It's just like, no, we're on strike.
Right. Yeah. And like
I mean my tongue and my teeth and the cheeks and all of the muscles that go into it. No, it's not gonna happen.
And like every single word that you say after that ends up just being completely jumbled. Like the brain's just like, no, I'm done. All right.
That was a good one.
Exactly. So kind of warm that up a little bit. Let's kind of we'll break into the next segment here. We're gonna kind of do this is like the quick round. So we're gonna start with a couple quick responses with challenges, and it's pretty much like, what do you think? So I kind of leave the time open for now as we kind of build up the format. So basically, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring out a topic, and it might be politics, it might be entertainment, it might be whatever. But basically, I'm gonna pose it to you. You get to say whatever you like about it, and then the other guest gets to challenge, and I might throw in a challenge as well. So Matt, since you started off with the tongue twister, I'm going to start with you, Brian. You posted last week, maybe even earlier this week, about.
You didn't tell me we were going through our own stuff. Okay. Continue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
that's amazing. All right.
The Star Wars. So you posted previously about Star Wars. And,
yes.
The excitement that's kind of coming around that, and now tickets are officially on sale, and we've got the latest trailer, we've got the poster that's been reviewed, we've got everyone kind of analyzing and figuring out what this is all about. What's your reaction to Star Wars right now?
Well, okay. First of all, let me start by saying that I am excited. I am excited because it's the Lord of the Rings of our time, right? It's the sort of mythology that's been handed to us through the art medium that we're most familiar with. Everybody knows it. And so I am excited about it. I'll be there. I'm going to take my kid. We went and saw, well, I didn't have a kid when I went and saw the other ones, but, I saw them and wasn't thrilled. And I think I am the average to middle, I'm average to higher average Star Wars fan. I'm not a rabid fan. But what I am is a big fan of the idea of mythology, like how these things interact with us and how we relate to films and stories, and so in that sense, I love Star Wars. This is this great sort of epic tale of hero. And the comment that I made last week was that the reason why there's never going to be another good film is because the first 3 films were a complete set. It's a complete arch. The mythology art, beginning, middle, end. It wraps it all up. We see Vader burn. We see everything, finalized at the end. There's no more story to tell in that original story. And so anything that happens after that point is going to be cut out of new material. You have to invent new parts and try and tag them in. Where like something like Aliens, after the first movie, there's tons of questions. There's tons of questions that need answering after Alien, and so there's Aliens, and then Alien, Electric Boogaloo, and you know what I mean? So you can keep making those Alien movies because the magic of the first movie is always going to be part of your enjoyment of the second, third, ninth movie because it's still answering questions, and so your brain is still pulling on that. But to watch episode 1, 2, 3, 7, it doesn't require you to go back and access, I'm using the numbers, but 4 through 6, right? So it's you just, those were a set, they're done, they're a shelf piece, they're finished, and they don't require, there's no more story to be told because it tells the whole thing. And so that was my idea, and I'm just using that to temper expectations for what's going to come out. You go watch the movie, it's going to be a complete movie, but it's going to stand on its own by necessity. Yeah, you can have the same characters, you can have the same actors, you can have the same airplanes, but it doesn't need the story because the story's done. That was my
So you're taking on it's going to be exciting regardless of how anyone felt about the other movies. I mean, you can even go take it on to Star Trek, done by the same director, thankfully, actually, and you really didn't need the other movies to be able to get into these newer ones. It's kind of...
Right, if they stand alone, that's fine. But if you go in like, I'm looking for a continuation of the experience, I think a lot of people are showing up to the theater hoping that this continues the thrill ride from the first three, right? And the first three were exciting, they're adventurous. The prequels that they made were, they were dull. They were like intergalactic politics and
right.
Sort of cloak and dagger and hidden, you know what I mean? The originals were an adventure story, you know what I mean? And you can write another adventure story, but if you go expecting that it's gonna tap into the first three, you can't because they're untouchable. They're like I said, it's already a polished piece hanging on the wall. You can't just tack on another part to the Mona Lisa. It's the Mona Lisa. If you want to make Mona Lisa 2, it's got to be a good painting by itself.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's got to be a good painting by itself. You can't just tack on a new part and go, oh yeah, we weren't done. Here's more. So Star Wars doesn't work that. Like I said, Aliens works that way. Star Wars doesn't.
How about you, Matt? Are you a Star Wars fanatic? Do you follow it all?
It lost me after Jar Jar Binks. I stopped watching it completely. I don't know what's happened since then. I need to watch it. Actually, I didn't even know that these were not like connected together. I thought it was still all supposed to be one story, but I haven't looked at any of them for a long time. So.
Yeah, I was, my background for it was that I got into Star Wars when I was about 8 or 9, like the early 90s, and after watching the first 3, I can actually like comprehend them. My older brother had the Thrawn trilogy that's supposed to continue the story that they made the movies about. I think Timothy Zahn was the author of those books, and so after that, they basically. There's Han Solo and Leia end up having twins, and then those twins, one ends up becoming kind of the evil. He goes over to the dark side. The other twin is a Jedi, is training to be a Jedi. Their grandfather is essentially, Luke, Grandmaster Skywalker is teaching them and training them, and then it kind of continues on the stories that way. It kind of you now have. Essentially terrorists at the end of Return of the Jedi who are fighting against the Empire, and you have the Senate that's all on board with the Empire, and essentially you just killed their emperor. And so it kind of deals with the story and how everything kind of rebuilds from there. So I'm excited to kind of counter the point. I'm excited to see the continuation of that story. Recently, I watched the Machete Order of Star Wars, which is you watch A New Hope, which is the first one that came out, Star Wars, everyone knows. Empire Strikes Back, and then you go back. You skip Phantom Menace because there's a lot of it doesn't really fill any holes. It's basically kind of like the prequel to it's like Prometheus to the aliens. They tell you it's not a prequel, right. But it kind of still is. But it's not really necessary to take on the rest. So. you could skip over it and watch the second one, The Attack of the Clones, and then after that you watch Revenge of the Sith, and so that gives you like a prequel to Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. Then you go back and watch Return of the Jedi, and I think that's a really cool way to watch it, because what ends up happening is so the original title of Return of the Jedi was actually Revenge of the Jedi. And so after having watched the, in the machete order, you get why it is kind of it's more than a Return of the Jedi. It is actually, in a way, the Jedi is getting their revenge by defeating. It kind of brings that whole story of Anakin bringing balance to the Force, so to speak. In that, he, at the end of Return of the Jedi, spoiler alert, Darth Vader is kind of, all of a sudden he gets his heart back, and in a way the dark side's defeated, so to speak, at the end of that. And that's kind of what we're left with. So I'm interested to see, while it's not going to be the Thrawn trilogy, it might be, I don't know, as far as how that goes, I really think that Rilo Ken, the guy with the cool... probably the worst lightsaber you can probably have if you like fingers. It's I honestly, my fan theory is that he is taking on the male twin from Han Solo and Princess Leia. That's kind of my theory on that.
Or that he is the male twin.
Maybe he is.
Oh, did I just blow your mind? Hey, so you've heard that they've tossed out that, or supposedly that when they made the movie, when J.J. Abrams, when they conceived of all this, they didn't feel beholden to follow that storyline. So this might be a whole new territory, or that might be just a line they threw out so when everybody shows up and watches the movie day one, they'll realize, all these hardcore Star Wars fans, that, oh my God, they are doing it, and they've just been lying to us the whole time.
That's J.J. Abrams' fashion. He did it with Lost. We're not dead. They're not in purgatory. They did it with Star Trek 2, where that's not Khan, and then all of a sudden,
it's Khan, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. And so, I wouldn't put it past J.J. Abrams to kind of throw out that disinformation campaign, so to speak. In any case, I got tickets. I'm going. The day before opening night. They don't have midnight showings anymore. Maybe that's a conversation for another time. But I'm looking forward to it. So you'll see me in the theaters then. All right, cool. So kind of moving on. Matt, here's yours. If you are ready.
I am ready.
Starting off with the softball ones. Fast food. So last week, in the first time in a long time, I ate some Taco Bell, and it was an interesting experience, both during before middle, and after. So this is kind of a softball. As when you turn to fast food, what is your fast food of choice and why?
In-N-Out. In-N-Out's good, just because their burgers are good. Their fries are pretty terrible, but everything else is pretty good there. And then I like Freebird's. It's a good burrito place, but we don't have one in Ventura anymore, so I'm pretty bummed about that.
Those commies.
Yeah, I know.
Brian, how about you?
Jerks.
This is a super softball one.
Right. Gosh, I have kids, so I'm constantly at McDonald's. If left to my own devices, I would probably go Del Taco. I'm not a skinny person, so fast food tends to be a part of my life more than I'd like to admit. But it's usually whatever's closest. If there's a spicy chicken sandwich on the menu, I'm kind of in and not really picky about it. I don't. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say I'm not a connoisseur about it because I like to cook and I like to eat good food also. So I just, when I go, I'm not pretending like it's my favorite meal of the day. I'm just like, okay, what carbs and meat can I put in my maw in 20 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so there's no I try not to. I don't consider it actual food. It's more like pellets that come at me.
Yeah,
just to get me to the next thing.
you do have to kind of like just lean back and accept it, kind of thing. It's
Right?
it's I like to cook too. Sometimes less than others. Really depends on the work day or how I'm feeling or how stubborn I feel. It's just it is so much easier to kind of go out and get that quick food. You mentioned some McDonald's there. Did the all-day breakfast menu did that send you running to get that egg McMuffin at 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
No, no, and no, because I think honestly, and I've actually was seeing a dietitian, I was not like a dating, but like a dietitian was telling me about getting protein in the morning, and I'm like, smoothie shake. She's like, just eat an egg McMuffin. Get the protein in your body earlier in the day. And so I was like, this is a dietitian.
Yeah, well, sign me up for that dietitian.
Went to a medical school or whatever. I don't know if DeVry is offering, but she's telling me to eat an egg McMuffin. But the idea is you get protein in your system earlier in the day and it lasts, right? And so, given obviously a nice egg and maybe a protein shake is the best way, but she was just saying that an egg McMuffin is a better breakfast than a fruit smoothie because there's no protein you're going to get. And so that was just her advice. But I don't think that I crave it all day.
Yeah,
Jack in the Box is a different story. Jack in the Box is good breakfast food. McDonald's is
well, and you know what? They've been the one to do breakfast all day. They've always done breakfast all day, and I think that's always been that was the Jack in the Box thing.
Right. However, and if we're talking about Facebook things, here's like a scroll past it. Oh, that's an idea for a segment. I scrolled past, just like news stories that you just like went up. Like I'm not reading that now. But here's the headline I scrolled past 2 days ago, which is local franchisees say that all-day breakfast menu is an egg-soaked nightmare. So just let that title, that headline, egg-soaked nightmare, to describe. And this, obviously McDonald's is a huge franchise. They basically tell with these local franchisees, they tell them what to do. A guy owns 3 or 4 McDonald's and gets, here's the report. Oh shit, we're making breakfast all day. And that reminds me of an anecdote I heard, which is a friend of mine worked for the fire department, and they were doing, like a forest fire eradication or something, and they sent a guy down to McDonald's. They called in an order. I said, we need 600 Egg McMuffins, thinking like the guy would just go, oh, we don't know what to do. They said, yeah, no problem, and had within the hour 600 Egg McMuffins, 600 eggs that they just happened to have.
Oh wow!
At a local McDonald's, and 600 pieces of ham, and so I'm just saying that anecdote describes what they're able to produce. But I gotta think that the reason that McDonald's has been so steady on that all-day breakfast thing for so long, they've refused to budge, even though a lot of people have clamored for it, is because there's probably a real process of switching over. And if you were 2 minutes early, they wouldn't make you a hamburger. If you were 2 minutes late, they wouldn't make you an Egg McMuffin.
Right.
Right?
I always felt
it was hard and fast.
I mean, having worked, there was some mention before about being a temporary Boy Scout. So I was 17, just graduated high school, and
right. Good summer.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. It was. I missed out. I grew up religious, so I went to Awana instead of Boy Scouts. So it's kind of like religious Boy Scouts. You go up the tiers and basically memorize the entire Bible for candy and Sparky Bucks so that I can get some playing cards. So that was apparently how they incentivized religion when I was younger. I don't know how it is now, but being able to go back to the Boy Scout point, tangents. We should have a segment called Tangents. Cooking eggs and learning how to cook boiled eggs, taking a huge bag out of a cardboard box of freeze-dried egg and throwing it into a hot pot of water, and then 30 minutes later feeding it to 50 some odd plus kids. It does, in a way, having worked in that type of environment, kind of push you toward wanting to really cook your own food, just because of that whole mass-prepared. Tuna extender. I didn't even know that was a thing until you go see that.
What is that?
It's basically like protein powder. It's soy protein powder that you add to tuna, and what it does is it coagulates. Maybe might be the best word to use it. It kind of extends tuna. So when you make that tuna salad and you're chewing on what you think is tuna, it's actually just a soy byproduct. So
wow.
Just imagine how they're cutting costs at the fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
It's kind of kicking it on to more of a grab bag. Here come the more deep, divisive topics. This one here is Ahmed Mohamed, the clock bomb boy. So I think I'm going to kick this one over. I've got my own stances on this, but the latest news is that he's actually moving to Qatar. And the reason why this even kicked up for me is that the way that the headline was worded that I scrolled past was that he got arrested again trying to get to Qatar. I think it was just kind of set up in a way where it was, boy arrested for bomb clock moving to Qatar, and it's like, wait a second, did he get arrested again? Like, what's going on here? So I'm going to kind of leave this open, but I'm going to kick it over to you, Matt. Ahmed, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Clockmed, as he's known on conspiracy sites. I think the whole thing was a hoax. I think he did that intentionally to just be a little troublemaker, and I say that because I used to be a little troublemaker. But I think it was intended to have religious overtones so that it would become a story. And I also have a conspiracy theory about it, which is that his dad ran for president in Sudan twice, and I don't think as a candidate Obama would legally be allowed to meet with him. So this story kind of helped push him into the headlines, stir up some controversy. Obama can say something about the kid and then invite the kid, and then the family can tag along, and maybe Obama could meet with the father. That might have been the point all along, I think. But
so your stance on this, because I've seen, I'm just pulling out the Facebook posts. I've seen a lot of, you're the conspiracy guy, and posting that there was some advantage or some hidden meaning for even Obama to reach out and talk with this kid, and so I'm going to kind of push you on that to kind of respond to the accusations that you have on Facebook as far as there's a lot of Obama's not a Christian, he's a Muslim stuff in the conspiracy realm, and so kind of what are your thoughts? What are your comments about that?
About Obama not being a Christian, or about just the connection to Ahmed, or
what is the significance? Why Ahmed, and why this? How does this forward whatever agenda it is that the conspiracy network has about Obama, specifically about the Muslim community?
Okay, yeah. Historically, at least what people in conspiracy communities see is that Obama has backed Muslim forces and been very involved with Muslim countries more than other presidents ever have, and he's kind of leaning in their direction. And if you read Obama's, I think it's his autobiography, or maybe he had someone write it for him.
Is that the Stories from My Father, or I don't think that's the right title, but
I always confuse the books. I'm not sure which one this is in, but he says, if the political winds shift, I'll stand with the Muslims. So I mean, he clearly has an affinity for Islam, I think, and I don't see almost any of his stances as being what a Christian would propose. At least not like a Protestant Christian, maybe Catholic, because they're a little more on the liberal end a lot of times. But and another thing is, like, Obama seems to have had his hand in all of the Arab uprisings, all of the Arab Spring, revolutions, and I think Sudan might also be ripe for harvest if he wants to kind of stick his fingers in there and do something there. advance whatever goals. And so since Ahmed's father, Muhammad Mohamed, which is his name, or Mohammed El Hassan Mohammed, he might, run again for president, and maybe this time he'll have the backing of Obama or the U.S. or whatever, and so this might be another in for him to kind of plan with someone else how they would carry out an Arab Spring.
Well, you kind of touched on something there too. Is that what was it? Ben Carson had come out and said, he wouldn't support Muslims being president, and taking that on and being that, okay, so there's a lot of rhetoric again, kind of pointing to, everyone says that Obama's a Muslim, he's not a Christian by any means, and I counter that with sources that can be found online and being able to find that, and of course, it's the internet, so things can be created. But Brian, what do you think? What do you think about Matt's identifying that Obama's using this as an advantageous position to kind of forward him standing with Muslims and kind of supporting them over all else. How do you feel about that?
Well, so there's a bunch of things to unwrap there. Standing with Muslims, or favoring Muslims above all else, or this was a contrived scenario in order for the two to meet. I mean, there's three different levels of. So here's the thing. I mean, and I say this to anybody who has a problem with Obama's meeting Muslims, supporting Muslims. So what? It's a secular nation founded on the idea that we're in charge of our own stuff and we should be able to build the world that we want to live in, and religion shouldn't matter. And Ben Carson is crazy for saying the stuff that he said. When I hear this stuff, with 10th grade, and I know I'm hearkening back to it, 10th grade civics course of, this is a nation that is secular, founded out of the Enlightenment, where we sort of all realize, like, if we're going to help ourselves, we need to do it ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that the church can't reach into politics. Now, obviously, we live in a real world where all of that stuff happens, and there's all of this, power of play, but I just say, so what, right? And the idea that you would need to contrive this so the two of them can meet, you're talking about the most powerful man on the planet. That guy doesn't have Skype where he could just Skype secretly. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why do this to meet if you could just meet under 1,000 other much more less troublesome scenarios that aren't in full view of the press? You could just meet any other way and not have to do this. I guess that's my problem with conspiracies in general, is that the scenario that you've built around this thing that requires to build so many other ad hoc things that we can't possibly know are required in order for this story to work, right? Things that you have to invent, all of these other circumstances. Well, what if this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened? And the simple answer is, well, yes, all of those details that you have no proof of have to be true in order for your story to be true. So it's like,
yeah.
Why? I don't believe we should always take media at face value, but to invent a whole other universe in order to make one thing work in yours, other than, hey, maybe it's not as easy as we thought, right?
Yeah, I kind of take on that stance with from a technology standpoint, like going through high school. Before social media was really a widespread thing, even going back before that, you think like JFK and of course I can't think of Area 51 and stuff like that, where we didn't have a 24-hour, not just a news cycle, but we didn't have a mass widespread I mean, you can't even be a politician and get a dick pic out there without it eventually getting released and everybody finding out. And there's, I think,
Well,
as time goes on, it kind of takes on, to me, it takes on that approach of like, the more people that need to be involved, on top of the fact that social media exists, on top of the fact that the internet as a whole has grown into this behemoth of information. It seems a lot less likely for a lot of things to conveniently happen and turn to one way or the other. What do you think, Matt?
Okay, I'll address the what you were just talking about right now, and then I kind of wanted to get back to the religion doesn't matter thing. But so how do big conspiracies get pulled off? If it involves so many people being involved, the way it happens, I think, is they're all part of a group that would make it happen. And I know most of us, since we are basically innocent, we don't do these things, it's really hard to envision what other people are doing. If people are conspiring to commit heinous crimes with a bunch of other people, we don't see how they could pull that off, because you'd figure one person would spill the beans or something. But the problem is that they're living in a different world than we are. They, I believe, okay, in terms of control and power, government intelligence agencies, they're very powerful. They're probably one of the most powerful things in a nation. I mean, they can just give someone bad info and have some other place bombed, or they're the brain kind of our country. They're our senses and our brain. But more powerful than them is religion, or a cult, or a secret society, because they a lot of times take oaths to do exactly what we don't think they could ever do, and to die if they don't follow through. Like, this is well documented throughout history within secret societies, cults, and religions. I mean, I don't know if either of you are connected to many, like, anybody of like a minority religion, like say Mormonism. Even though that's not really a minority religion here, that's like America's religion. How much do you know about it? How much do you know about what goes on behind closed doors?
Well, I think that's the point. I think taking that point is that it's like Scientology, right? Like, so nobody knew about Xenu until people started exodusing from Scientology and they had more freedom to take the knowledge that they know and expose it, so to speak.
But they're not taking blood oaths. They're not saying that, you can kill me, if I violate my oath, which is what a lot of these secret societies and some cults do.
So taking on kind of getting back to the religious conversation, kind of continuing that on, my brother actually posted up a kind of a food for thought. This says here, why is religion ever brought up in any political discussions or decisions? I understand that you have your beliefs, and I get that you may hold them close to you, and that is your right, but not everyone believes the same thing. In fact, there are so many religions in the world that it would be utterly insane to think that it's even possible to incorporate every one of them into our system. Religion should be something you follow on your own, not pushed on the decisions of great importance for our country and its future. There are obvious standards in which life can flourish: freedom, safety, health, education, happiness, etc., all of which do not require any religious beliefs to create and expand on. Religion is great for some, and if you believe in God, nothing, or are just unsure, that's your choice, and that's fine. The choice is made for the future of this country, and the people in it should not be made because one believes they are righteous and just. They should be for the well-being of every person in this country. Brian, as the I believe you identified as yourself the humanist.
Professional atheist.
Professional atheist. Okay. All right.
I have earned a pay.
Okay. So
Sure.
How do you feel about that statement as far as religion should have no part?
Well, obviously I agree with it because I mean. And let me just say that I don't disagree with Matt about secret societies. I don't, because what you said, Matt, is really astute. That some people live in a completely different world than we live in. And I actually believe that to be true. You know, mostly Periscope has convinced me of that. That some people live in a completely different world that I can't possibly understand. But you know, that's true. Except that there is the real world, which we all inhabit, and while we can get into these, you know, sort of, you know, I think it's sociology, right? You start to hang out with a very specific group of people, and you take on a very specific group dynamic, and usually some sort of pressure comes into that. Another Facebook story, which is Tony Blair sticking his dick in the head of a dead pig when he was, you know, a college student. Obviously,
oh, that was David Cameron. David Cameron was
David Cameron, not Tony. Right. You know, it's like I understand that at some echelon there is a very strictly understood code of conduct, and if you're going to be part of this group, we need to know that you are in. And I believe that happens in business. I believe that happens in religion. I believe that happens at the upper echelons. You know, obviously a lot of these sort of skull and bones and sort of secret college societies, fraternities, you know, if you just want to list Illuminati Masons all the way down the list of the, you know, secret societies, that's basically the thing. And I'm going to just say Catholicism and every religion on the world. Hey, let's get you to commit this super embarrassing thing like stating the Apostles' Creed, the Catholic joke there. and if you say it like I believe in one God, the blah blah. I used to be Catholic. So if you say this thing, then we all stood here and heard you. If you put your dick in that pig's mouth, we have a picture of it, right? And so we expect you to toe the line. And we expect you to do this, you know, and then that's where all your business, because I believe all of that. I don't discount it. But we all, even though you have ended up in your own very specific and narrow group of people, and some of those groups of people can be very, very powerful, we all still live in the real world, right? And people have changes of heart, Scientology, Xenu leaks, and court documents, right? It's like, this stuff exists in the real world, and the only tool we have for saying, yeah, okay, we understand that that's how you function, but we all need to function on this planet too, is our, you know, well, there's 6 billion of us, right? And we all need to figure out. So we have these sort of avenues of power of saying that we can make this, we can bring sanctions, we can call you to court, we can do these things. And I don't believe that the basic human robot, person, animal, whatever, while some people can completely fall in line and for the rest of their lives do something, but if you take something like
our first technology gaffe of the day, Brian, you kind of cut out
billionaire with everything at stake to keep his mouth shut. Somebody's just a plumber who unlocked the door that day to.
So Brian's cutting out a little bit. We'll cut back over after your bandwidth catches up. But Matt, I think that kind of passes on to you, is that you know, from what I'm gathering from what Brian is saying, is that at some point you have to kind of catch up. You can have your beliefs, you can have all of that, but at some point those older commitments, those older focuses of yours, kind of over time start to maybe even lose significance for you as just a human being. Like you stop maybe focusing on that. Do you think that's possible? I mean, that kind of cuts into one of the other things that we had, is that, like, is it okay to change your opinion on something? Is it okay to kind of to go, okay, you know what, where I was before is not where I want to be, and here's my renewed stance on this? What do you say to something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I was telling you this the other day, like my grandpa said, like, I hate being wrong, so if I'm wrong, please tell me so I can correct myself and stop being wrong. Absolutely. But in this case, I'm not wrong. So I'm not convinced that I'm wrong anyway. So I'm still here.
Well,
Is he back yet?
no, it looks like he's still frozen. He's frozen. Let's as far as it's like here. Oh, it doesn't even show the thumbnail when we're able to switch to it. But he's in this perfect pose of like pontification right now. So while we wait for him to reconnect, I'll kind of redirect that question back to you, Matt.
Yeah.
Is okay. So within your beliefs, you have not been presented with information that causes you to kind of take on a different stance. But the question remains: is okay? Say 30 years from now, maybe it's not about religion. Maybe it's about really anything else, and let's keep it deep, not just I like McDonald's now instead of Taco Bell, but where you're actually able to the way that you live your life, the way that you see others. Do you believe that it's possible that someone could kind of have a turnaround where they are convinced to go the other way?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that for many people that they'll change their minds about things. I mean, I have no intention, just like you have no intention, I'm sure, just like Brian has no intention of being wrong about things. Hopefully we believe the correct things. And until someone convinces us that we're wrong, I don't see any point in, not continuing to hold on to the things that we think are true. So until it's been actually defeated in your mind, keep believing it, I think.
Right, and I think we got Brian back. Brian, do we have you on at least for audio? All right. Well, we'll wait a little bit as he gets reconnected here. I'll kind of close this off here, and we can always continue this on later. But I'm going to close with this here. I have a quote that was posted up on a political person's wall here, and it says that a Christian coach at a public school is told not to lead his team in prayer before the big game. Before you get angry, ask yourself, would you be angry if he was a Muslim and you tried to get the kids to pray with him before the game? And the school told him he wasn't allowed to lead them in a prayer. What if he was Wiccan? What if he was Hindu? If you're outraged about the way one religion is being treated but wouldn't have the same opinion of another, you're not defending religious freedom. You're asking for special treatment. I mean, that to me is kind of where I see our country right now, is that there's this huge focus on determining what Muslims should believe, and I mean this is over 1 billion different people, and I look at, having grown up in Christianity, I look at how many different demographics there are, how many different denominations that there are, and I kind of see that as being, I think right now people have taken this weird combined approach that being Muslim somehow means that you've taken this essentially blood oath that says death to America, death to anybody who disagrees with you, and I know that is not the case for at least the Muslim practicing Muslims that I know. So why, Matt? Why do you think this is something where? Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that as a country we seem to focus on Muslims being kind of put out in this way that they must mean that they have to believe death to Christians, they have to believe this in order to kind of continue on?
Don't. I think there's two types of Muslims. There's ones that are kind of like a lot of the Christians here that are just born into it. They're kind of like, yeah, my parents said that we're Christians, so we're Christians, but they don't understand anything about the Bible. In the same way, there's a lot of Muslims that they call themselves Muslims and all that, and they know a lot of the traditions, but they don't actually know what's in the Quran, so they can't really say, I think, with certainty that they actually believe what is said in the Quran. And most people do not want to do what they're instructed to do in the Quran, which is kind of have a harder life where you you are supposed to keep advancing Islam, and the method of choice is sword. So that's in the Quran. I've read it twice. So I mean, I've met the sweetest people in the world that were Muslims, but I honestly don't think that they're taking those passages to heart. They're kind of picking and choosing a lot, like a lot of Christians or a lot of people in any religion do with their own texts. But I think that if you took the most literal interpretation of the Quran, you would get what's being called a Muslim extremist or Islamic extremist. But they say that about Christians too. Christians that take the Bible literally, they think are extremists in some way, which doesn't make much sense to me at all, but because they're not really violent. But
well, and this argument oftentimes is kind of shrugged off, but you know, at one point in history, Christianity was in that same place where they took many literal meanings and applied it to as a universal rule, to the point even where there was, dare I say, genocide in that. I mean,
true.
Even in putting together the Bible, the Council of Nicaea, that is kind of that was that, and other meetings were responsible for getting the Bible that we have today. And so I think this might be why I kind of shy away from being like participating in any religious kind of creed, having grown up being born into Christianity, not really having the testimony and just having it like, this is life, this is truth, and the kind of over time experiencing kind of a wider expansion. I think this might be why I kind of I shy away from being like participating in that. So
well, yeah, I mean, there's so many different opinions and interpretations, and you know, you can, like, a smart person can convince themselves of anything. So if they wanted to mix like some of the Bible together with something else, they can convince themselves that it's telling them to, like, a religion with their own beliefs and their goals. They can convince themselves that the Bible tells them that they can go, kill people to fix their goal or to get to their goal or something. But it's just chatter everywhere, which is the frustrating thing. That's what I can't stand too, is why isn't there just a strict interpretation? But that's why I don't really say that I'm part of any denomination, because I'm still figuring things out for myself. I'm still researching for myself. I think there's only a couple things that are really important within Christianity, but that are really, really important. And then everything else is kind of like a side note, like, oh, we should proceed this way in the church or that way in the church.
The soy tuna extender, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, well, you look at back in the early days, like when Jesus had just died on the cross and there were Christianity just started, like a lot of those people were illiterate. They don't, and they didn't have the compiled Bible. Were they saved? I think they were. But a lot of people get into technical stuff about the Bible, the after the Gospels, all those letters and Revelation, and they alter what they gained in the gospel with kind of legalism, which I don't think is very good. And I don't think that makes you saved or not. But anyway, that's me. But I understand why you wouldn't want, like, you'd want to pull back from religion, because it seems like a lot of people just arguing and bickering over details and stuff.
Right. So, well, I think even from the outside in, just again, having just been raised like this is just the way it is, I've found that myself, and I have to kind of curtail this often, because I've even posted on some of your posts before about how, specifically about Muslims, like, it's not really for us to determine how someone else should follow their faith. And I've found that I've become even more legalistic in the way, being outside of Christianity, looking in, going, wow, growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that might have been, like the idea of mutated crime-fighting turtles. The only way that these mutations would happen, you kind of think back to like the stories you hear in Genesis about the incubus and all of that. that's not that we were like, oh, they're demons, but just kind of going, well, that can't be of God, and so this is not it. And so I kind of see the exceptions that are, we didn't celebrate Halloween, for instance, and in that, and now it's kind of like, well, do it for the kids. Why are we depriving the kids based off of this belief? And it kind of seems like, religion these days, and I don't know if it was that way when I was younger, it kind of was just my life, but religion these days has kind of been let's see what makes you feel comfortable, and when it starts to feel uncomfortable, then you take a stance on it. And I think politicians are extremely susceptible to this, because a lot of the politicians that are out there are fighting against fighting for morality, fighting for family values, this idea of family values that they have, and then later on finding those scandals where they've kind of gone way against that. And so for those who are watching or watching live, we're trying to get Brian back on. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty in getting that working, but we will hope to kind of spread out this conversation a little bit more. Let me kind of adjust the conversation a little bit, and let's see. Let's focus on. Oh, let's see here. Let's talk about Back to the Future Day. How about that? Let's see if that is kind of like a filler
That's
thing.
A lighter topic.
Much lighter. So Back to the Future Day. This is the real one today, October 21st. I believe he came back at, it was like 1 something or 4 something. Shows you how much of a nerd I am. I was never did really well with the history of on this date at this time, this is what happened. But so today is Back to the Future Day. There's been a lot of articles on there. It's kind of been flooding through. We're talking about everything from flying cars to hoverboards. Matt, are you impressed with where technology has taken us today, or what?
You know me. I'm a neo-Luddite. I really am. I can't stand technology progressing like it is, because I know that there's so much more powerful technology out there now, and we don't even know about it. And it's giving just a few people, a handful of people, an immense amount of power. But as for all the toys, yeah, that's awesome. I love being able to watch movies on my computer all the time from Sweden or something.
As technology for me is always, I've always been one step ahead of it. I've always been the person that everyone kind of pings for whenever their technology stops working, and I kind of use that as like the general, your technology is broken, whether it be I can't connect to the internet, or like for me in my phone, wherever my phone is, it's right in front of me. For that, it kind of I get really disappointed with technology sometimes, and I think it's because of that old adage of planned obsolescence, where you have a phone that I know that there's a certain matter of perception that comes along with a lot of things, but I think ultimately what ends up happening is that we get used to that, and we just want it to become more efficient. For whatever reason, I just want something to continue to work the way it was when I first got it, and I don't know. As far as conspiracies, that to me would be the best hidden conspiracy, is that the tech companies have hidden that they're like, okay, let's just keep pushing for people to get more technology going and buy more things. Oh, you got to buy the new hardware because the software that we created is really meant for the newer hardware. And in my mind, it should just be like, well, then don't give me the update. Like, at least let me know when you update this, your technology is gonna go to shit. Speaking of technology going to shit, welcome back, Brian Parra.
I'm talking to you on my cell phone, which is ridiculous.
Yes. Nice. Well, that might actually be another great point, is that we were talking about how it's Back to the Future Day to day, and there's a lot of things we didn't get, like flying cars. Although I'll settle with self-driving cars, but. I was just expressing my disdain for the way that technology is just so inconsistent these days, where you're kind of forced to upgrade that software that makes your hardware obsolete, and you're kind of in this like endless loop of disaster.
Right.
I
don't have any disagreement. I think I know why that happens, but certainly no disagreement.
in the element of being conspiracies, I think that one is the most believable one to me. Is that technology companies are trying to make it harder on us.
No, they're trying to make money. I mean, that's. I think. Well, I think most technology isn't made for us, right? When things are, when sort of these, when new frontiers are breached, they come out with. I mean, these are typically things that are generated for the military or for high technology research, and then the companies that make them. And all of that sounds all big evil, but it's not. It's just that that's who has the billions of dollars it takes to research this kind of stuff. The military, high-level education, medical research, computers, astronomers. I mean, that's where the money is to make these advances, right? And then companies like, okay, well, we got this thing. How can we package it so we can sell it as a $500 cell phone, right? And then, it becomes pure marketing, right? Like, if we can sell this thing for $500, it can do this and this and this and this, and then let's make a bunch of money. Well, great, we made all that money. Well, what's the next thing we can stick out there that's going to make us a bunch of money? And unfortunately, the consumers are probably the last person in that equation, which is, what do they care about? And I want to say that, like Apple, and I'm not a fan of Apple, I'm not like a fanboy of that stuff. I have everything on mine says HP or Android on it. But I think that Apple might be the least of all evils, which is like, we really care about how this stuff works and feels in the hands of people. And even though they're just as bad as everybody else in terms of updating stuff, and let's use a new plug that nobody has, you know what I mean? Like, I think they were the least of the offenders, but there's certainly an offender, but the least of those are the people that really cared about how the technology functioned in the people. I didn't buy into it, but I certainly acknowledge that that was a value. I think that they did that really well.
Yeah, I think that whenever someone asks me and I gauge their technical ability, they go, "Oh, what phone should I get?" iPhone. Like, I always just say, just go to iPhone, because I have no idea. I don't have, none of the products that I've ever owned have ever had a Steve Jobs has never thought about these things that I own, and so to me, when I'm trying to troubleshoot them, it's actually harder for me to troubleshoot because I'm so used to having so many different ways and options available that could go wrong that I can go and test. Whereas with Mac, I've always found that it's like, you've got pretty much one way to fix things, and there might be another way, but it's not as prominent, and so it's a lot more difficult to get to. So I find that, yeah, it is built around, what is the consumer willing to pay for? What kind of experience can I get to them? And it kind of, that's just, technology to me is supposed to make my life easier. It's supposed to automate things. It's supposed to do the multitasking that I'm not supposed to do, but I still try to do, because that's just, in a way, society as a whole is trying to be more like technology and less human. And especially I've found, within my limited experience of being an American, I find that especially in our society, we really rely on being able to work more. Like, I'm skeptical of self-driving cars, because the moment that we can now drive or commute to work, now we're able to work. That's like an hour commute. Now you can work that hour because they know you're not driving the car, so maybe they're going to be like, okay, well, we're just going to squeeze that extra hour in. And I feel like, as far as workers go, it's just, we have a propensity to say, like, work hard, and that means, like, work hard means work longer, and work longer means, like, now you don't have any room for family life, and it doesn't matter because your wife is working now, and it's not like the 50s was. I feel like they should update the game of life from the 50s version, where you get married and you get some stipends. Now it should be like, you get married and you end up doubling your income, but then you also have kids, and now there's that whole conundrum. And if you don't have kids, you have to get used to the idea of just paying more tax, because now you don't have children, so you'd like $3,500 tax that I'm paying for other people who have kids. That's my healthcare argument, by the way. But so so yeah, I think maybe we're kind of getting a little off tangent here as far as technology goes. Ultimately, we're just happy to have you back. And
Oh, I
yeah.
could go on like a 10-minute economics tangent from where you just left me now, but I'll spare you guys
Right on.
that one.
Content for another episode for sure.
Jesus, I mean, what you said is the front doorstep of a whole argument for why we should all just get money, right? Like why we should all just get free money from the government. And I could make it to you, but like I said, if we're running short on time, it's not the time to talk about that.
Well, that might be a good transition though over into talking about Bernie Sanders, and we're talking about being able, making decisions, the billionaires making decisions for how the rest of everyone just deals with it, and they're at no inconvenience here. My primary thing is that Bernie Sanders, I posted up right after the debates. I actually listened to it once through and then watched it the second time through, just because I find that for whatever reason I get some satisfaction out of that. But what I don't like is that he's allowing himself to be framed by the GOP, but also there's libertarians out there that obviously libertarians are not big Sanders supporters. The majority of them, I should say. I'm sure now that I'm going to get some emails or messages saying, "Oh, it's possible left-leaning libertarians," but I think the idea is that he's being painted as this evil socialist, and when we think socialism, we think like Stalin and death and destruction and bread lines and not being able to get toilet paper, and that is not, like, there's a huge difference between the whole democratic socialism and not. Police, the trash, all of the roads, all of these things that are public services that would be considered covered in socialist countries, but we found some way to kind of combine those two. My point is that not only during the debates was he given a direct question of, like, what do you say when they call you a socialist, he did not even attempt to differentiate himself. And then he went on to Bill Maher, which is probably the most extreme left of the conversation, and Bill Maher asked him and pressured him into responding, and still I mean, Bill Maher basically made the argument for him of, but this country has socialist principles that have intertwined with capitalism, so why don't you to kind of temper that? Matt, being probably much farther right than Bernie would be, where, like, do you understand that argument? Do you see the difference in Bernie being the difference between being a socialist and being the democratic socialist and the actual principles he stands for?
Well, okay, to be honest, I haven't followed Bernie that much. Has he at any point made the distinction? What's the difference between democratic socialist and socialist?
I'm telling you, I honestly believe
it might just be a convenient label for him. Maybe he really is just a socialist. He's just saying democratic socialist to get on the Democrat ticket.
Not knowing very much about the Marxist label, I would probably lean more toward him trying to give capitalism a heart. I don't think that from an extreme standpoint, I don't think that Bernie Sanders advocates for the government taking over the private sector, for instance. I think that would be the true socialism is bringing it to that point. Now, sure, if right now it's just the big banks. It's basically the top 1%. Not the big banks, but the billionaires. We've all heard his rants. It all sound the same. It's this constant, over and over and over again. The top 90% of the wealth is owned by the top 1/10 of 1%. And that can be backed up, and that can be researched. But now it's like, what now? So you're telling us this. You're giving us this doom and gloom. But what now? Is socialism going to end up getting, okay, we take care of the 1%. Okay, then we take care of the 10%. Then we take. I don't like slippery slope arguments, but. Right. I think that is what separates him from being a full-fledged socialist. I just don't think that anybody that isn't a European country would go for full-fledged socialism right now. And even European countries, they still call it European socialism, not socialism. So, Brian, it looks like you kind of froze for a bit, but you're back. What do you think? Are you a Bernie guy, or where are you at on the political spectrum?
I own a Bernie T-shirt. I guess that makes me a Bernie guy.
Is it true that he's price controlling those at like $7 or something like that for a T-shirt?
Mine was handed to me for free. So I mean, if that's price control,
I think if nothing else, that says everything about his campaign. Just give everyone everything for free, right?
Yeah, that is funny. You know, so I think that socialism gets a bad rap because the only versions of it that Americans know are Lenin, Stalin, Marx, and those all have very negative connotations because we were in a war with those guys, and it was a pretty serious war, and we had nuclear arms. You know what I mean? Like I think we need to separate out the ideas from our experience, right? Like we all have a bad taste in our mouth. And we think that that's what it is. But when you start pointing out that socialism is really just using resources for everybody, for things that make more sense, at least for me, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but at least for me, doing those things collectively that make sense to do collectively. Like trash, like fire, like and any number of other things. Should healthcare be a for-profit venture, right? I mean, no, healthcare is one of those things that whether you admit it or not, everybody needs, and it makes more sense to do them collectively for efficiency, for all sorts of other things. And so the question is, well, where does that money come from to fund those endeavors? Well, the simple answer is it should come from everybody, and those people that benefit from this system the most, right, should have an extra stake in making sure that those processes. And so, at the very basic level, if somebody lives in this country and they are a billionaire, and they haven't absconded to somewhere else, right? They live in this country, they do business in this country. If they don't like this country, they more than anybody else has the ability to pick up and leave. And they don't because this country has given them everything that they have needed to become successful, and they still find the economic climate here to be to their liking. And so somebody who gets thrown in this situation and becomes a billionaire, doesn't that person owe more than simply their fair share for continuing to maintain the system? You know what I mean? It's like, it's, I guess that's, I don't have a metaphor for that. It's just, if somebody comes here, this country was fertile ground for them to become unimaginably successful. I think that they owe more than the person who is in this country, and it's really tough for them because the unique situation, the factors, have allowed that person to become a millionaire, billionaire, whatever it is.
I agree. Yeah. I did touch on that point. I absolutely agree, and even I think that it's not just that, it's not like that's already happening. It's not like they're also paying the 30% minimum tax and then they have to find then they get all the same write-offs that we get. They get sure. There is a preferential treatment that comes along with being a wealthy business in this country. And yes, okay, they do produce jobs. Small business produces more jobs. They do get tax breaks. The hedge fund, which I thought got closed up a while ago, but maybe they started taxing it under capital gains tax instead. Before it wasn't even taxed. I guess the biggest thing that sucks is that as I go through, now in my early 30s, paying off for all the ass kissing I did in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s. I'm running my own company where it's continuing to grow. When I get to that point. All of those avenues, all of those things that our fathers had access to are gone. So the ability to make a massive quantity of wealth off of a good idea requires now some connection with going viral, or, social status, social stigma, stuff like that. So, I think the reason why I like what Bernie has to say, or at least had to, because it's starting to become just more of the same. Every time he gets airtime, it's almost like he memorized. It's like the Bernie bot. But I really feel that balancing it out and making, no one's really run on tax reform as strongly as anything else. And I think that I don't know if what the solution is. I don't know if it's a flat tax. I don't know. I don't know if they should just scrap the whole thing and start over. I mean, that's hard to do in a country of 350 plus million people without somebody getting hurt. I mean, look at healthcare. I think that that's a good thing. I think we're paying for it anyway, so it's nice to kind of get a system all together there. I'm a little biased. My wife has healthcare through her company, so I didn't have to go through the markets. But I think still moving toward, it's kind of starting that conversation to getting it to something that will ultimately, like, the end result is fixing that problem. We got a long way to go. People are going to hate it on the way. I've heard many stories of when the USSR changed over to Russia. There were people that didn't really even understand the concept of a buffet. So if you're really interested in this topic, I'm going to kind of move on. But if you're really interested in kind of what that drastic change was for the people moving from this extreme socialism to quote unquote democracy, we all know about Russia. But Goodbye Lenin is a movie. It's a German language movie, but they do have their subtitles, so you kind of got to get past that. But the story is about this guy's mom goes into a coma while the USSR is still strong, and Mother Russia, or I guess Mother USSR, and then she goes into a coma, wakes up, and in order for her to not be stressed out, they kind of create this environment of socialism around her, so that way she isn't hit by that shock that the rest of the nation had, because they're worried about her missing or going back. So. Wow, we'll just call this the tangent segment. The other thing that I've noticed too is that if you're watching this live, you have only been able to watch this live for the past 10 minutes, because there's a little button that you can push that says "Stand by." We're still recording, and so we hope that you enjoy this recording so far and being able to go back. Thank you, Google, for solving the problem of human error, at least. So this, I mean, we've gone on now. It's been about an hour and 15 minutes. I really wanted to cover this, and we kind of put this in the top subject. So I'm gonna be a bit rough on you guys. I'm gonna give you a real deep, heavy topic. And what I need back from you is, what's your rant? What's grinding your gears right now? And you have 2 minutes to kind of talk it out, and then I'd like the other guests to respond. And this was actually requested by Matt. The merits of gun control arguments, and I'll just read what your comment was.
Okay.
I'd like to talk about the merits of different pro-con gun control arguments, plus conditional predictions of what will happen to society based on potential future gun control laws. So it's one of the hottest subjects right now, as you guys all know. It seems like every week we get another update about some. I blame the media. All that put aside, what's your 2-minute rant-horrific argument?
Okay. So I don't know if I could cram it all into 2 minutes, but you could boil it down to this, though. If your neighbor has a gun on the side of his hip, are you going to be polite to him? Are there going to be problems with you and him? Probably not. More people with more guns makes a polite society, and I believe that. And if you look at all the stats across the whole world, the U.S. is 111th with homicides, and if we dropped off the gun-controlled liberal cities that from that and gave them like I think it was El Paso's stats for homicides, then we would be at like 230th place or something for homicides. You look at Switzerland, where everybody is forced to own a gun. They have like the lowest homicide rate. Now, of course, there's all different. There's a bunch of different variables that factor into, homicide rates and stuff. But I think that's the best way to say it. Like if you have a gun, you can protect yourself, you can protect other people, and people are generally going to be nicer because they don't want to be, I don't know, making everybody or making somebody that can shoot them angry.
So I do see, I looked up real quick as far as where we rank. It looks like we've kind of moved up. We're at 91 in the world for intentional homicide. And this is as of 2012. This is referencing Wikipedia as being kind of like the first resource, but it is linked, but you're welcome to search it, and I'll if we can put together some show notes here. But Brian, what do you think? Do you think that more guns makes a polite society?
No, because there are plenty of polite societies without guns. And, if you want to look at the most polite societies, there are all the Northern European, Scandinavia, obviously, what you said, Sweden excluded, but they're very polite societies. We're talking about rude societies, like France. They have cheese. But that's a joke and a terrible one, but I didn't think it through. But what I did think through, is this: everybody talks about the homicide rate. Everybody talks about it, and what they don't talk about is the gun, the gun death rate, which is other deaths that happen by gun. Toddlers killing other toddlers. Accidentally shooting yourself as you clean the gun, guns going off. Those rates, if you talk about the total number of people who die by guns and not homicides, the U.S. is way up there. And everybody loves to state that homicide rates don't they're not, what do you say, they don't correlate with gun ownership. But what does correlate is total number of death by guns absolutely correlates with the presence of guns in society. And actually, I don't think that the homicide rate is a good argument for the other side, because isn't that the point? That maybe homicides has nothing to do with guns, and if, I'm going to leave that on the table because I didn't think that went all the way through. But the fact of the matter is that death by guns and not homicides is way up, and it does correlate with gun ownership. It correlates perfectly with gun ownership. I say this as a gun owner. I am a gun owner. I own several guns. But that doesn't mean that I am I don't need to make every single argument an all or nothing thing. I believe in common sense gun laws. I believe in beefing up the mental health services to people who need it. I think that's a separate issue, but not unrelated, right? It's not completely one fault or the other, but it's a constellation of issues that have added up to this problem of mass shootings.
Yeah, I actually like that's. I'm glad that you said that, because I think that
I acknowledge that
the mental health issues are separate from gun issues, regardless of how the mental health issues affect the gun issues. There is a mental health problem. They shut them all of them down. We have we have a university. We turned a mental hospital into a university.
Right.
And so we just put them in jail now. We incarcerate. Another Bernie Sanders talking point is we incarcerate more people I'm just going to say more people than every other country. We incarcerate more people than China,
Well,
although
we
I think
do,
that's
yeah.
kind of a weak argument because China also has like mobile death wagons and stuff. I don't know if that's a conspiracy or not. I might be just regurgitating a random Google search, but now both of you kind of being on the opposite side of the spectrum, what I can't, because okay, so I don't guns. I just like, oh, guns. Like if someone has a gun, if they bring a gun to any fight that I'm in, I think I just might, death is the biggest adventure in that regard. Like not that I'm not suicidal. I don't hate life. I don't anything like that. But if it's your time, it's your time kind of thing. And I don't see myself, even if I had a gun, going, hold on, here I go. I'm going to defend myself. I just don't see myself doing that. As the resident 6'7" guy. All fights I've ever been in have all been a de-escalation fight. It's been a mental fight to have it not be blamed on me that the 6'7" guy got into a fight with the 5'7" guy, and it must be his fault because why? So I'm kind of distant on both sides because I'm not a gun enthusiast. I think that there's arguments on both sides that like there's questionable logic that's being used to kind of prove the point. I really cannot stand the Nazi comparison. I mean, my mom's from Germany, so there's some history there, and being able to hear about it. She was just telling me about Bridge of Spies, for instance, and how she used to be the kid playing in the bombed out buildings and all of that. There's to compare gun regulation to what the Nazis did. It's wrong. First off, the gun regulations in Germany were stricter before the Nazis came in. As part of as far as a treaty that Germany signed after World War I, gun control followed that. It was just almost a complete strict ban on having guns. So when the Nazis came in, they actually released they kind of brought it back to where we are right now. Registration of guns, you need to have licenses to be able to have that, and they even relaxed it even further as they continued their regime. So when people say, the current thing, I think it was again Ben Carson saying if only the Jews had guns, like they were allowed to have them. So I cannot stand the argument of comparing Nazis to anything on that side, and there's a part of me that's kind of like I don't have an answer. I'm not that big on guns, so there's a part of me that just doesn't care. But I also hate saying that because that's kind of the same thing as like, well, I don't vote because it doesn't matter anyway. I don't know. I'm speaking openly from someone who hasn't really come to a point where I feel that my rights are being impinged upon. Where is that going to? What do you both feel about, Matt? What do you feel about common sense gun regulation? That's a very general term, but how do you feel about registering your guns? How do you feel about being required training, required insurance, like these type of, what's to prevent the toddler from grabbing the gun out of your closet and shooting someone from being all of a sudden now like the responsibility is put more on the gun owner kind of stuff?
I don't think insurance should be forced on people. I think they can buy it if they need it. That obviously wouldn't really go anywhere because most people would be like, oh, I lock up my guns, nothing's going to happen. But, I mean, I think really, yeah, okay, so it boiled down to the politeness thing, but then also the original intent of the Second Amendment was not for hunting. It was to take out the government if they got off track. And that has never really changed. And for that reason, unfortunately, there are toddlers that are going to shoot toddlers. There was a story recently of a toddler shooting her grandma, I think, too, and dying. There's really bad things that are going to happen. School shootings still going to happen. But I think that is a sacrifice that we have to make to make sure that we can still defend ourselves in some way. Now, having said that, technology has progressed so far that with AR-15 and what other limited firepower I'm afforded or I have access to, I can't fight against drones and F-16s and troops, and I will die. I know that. So I mean, it's kind of a toss-up, but there are so many things wrong with our country that I think we should keep them. just because it looks like everybody, myself included, but especially liberals, did not like Bush at all. They thought he was tyrannical. They thought he was going to just stay in power. Kind of the same things that Republicans or conservatives now say about Obama. Here's the thing. We both say that about the country at some point, that our leader cannot be trusted, that we need more protection. So let's not get rid of guns just because we trust the current leader, because there's always going to be a worse guy that's going to come into office, and if he can control the country the way he needs to really, turn us into a totalitarian nation or something, I think we should have that backup. It's an insurance, and it's a sacrifice we make because we know that, accidents happen with guns, homicides occur with guns, but
I think it's an honest argument. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, okay, so I agree with Matt in that the intent of the Second Amendment was it's really for regime change, right?
Right.
Self-protection, which is why I own a gun, hunting, those are side arguments that detract from the issue. People want to talk about all the reasons that they want the gun, but everybody forgets that the point of the Second Amendment was that the reason for owning a gun, in broad strokes, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of constitutional scholars that might pin me down tighter than this, but in broad strokes, it's not to shoot home intruders, it's to shoot cops, right? I mean, that's the point of the Second Amendment, is
right.
that you should be able to defend yourself against tyrannical government. But here's the thing. At least as I see the argument breaks down here, and you made it for me, which is if the U.S. decides to honestly crack down on its citizens, they will be using big guns and drones. And me having a 357 Magnum under my bed is not going to offer me any kind of protection, right? If they decide to go through that. But I also have to assume that if that sort of thing happens, that we're all still human beings with brains on top of our head, and there are enough people and enough sort of parts of the government that if the president says, hey, it's time to start turning the drones around and using them on the American people, there are going to be enough people with enough power that disagree with him that are in control of the actual arsenals that will stage a fight. Police departments, local armories, state militias. I mean, those are the types of things that I think that the framers of the Constitution were talking about, which is that, and everybody forgets that part of the Second Amendment, which is all of this is in the context of a well-regulated militia, right? Point to me the well-regulated militia that all of these ammosexuals taking their guns to Chipotle belong to. They're big fat guys with camo t-shirts and AR-15 slung around their back. That's not the kind of well-regulated militia. A well-regulated militia is like the Louisiana National Guard. People who show up once a month, do training, and if the government decides to crack down on the states, I gotta imagine that the good old boys in the Louisiana National Guard, who have things like military-style vehicles, who have things like, guns and boxes and boxes of ammo, those guys aren't going to take it lightly. And they're all, free individuals. They're not part of the military. They're part of the state guard. And that's the type of militia that might stand a chance at an actual government takeover. But me, with my 357 under my bed that I've shot twice in my life, usually at pumpkins and watermelons, I'm not going to stand a chance. And I don't think that that is what the framers were talking about. And if they were talking about it, they weren't talking about me, which is a guy that's just shot pumpkins. They're talking about trained marksmen who spent their whole life relying on guns, who know how to handle them, and have guns that are comparable with the sort of forces that we're talking about. And back then we're talking about muskets and cannons, and right now we're talking about drones. And so I just don't think that the intention was just every gun in the hand of every citizen. I think they were talking about
that, though.
I'm sorry?
I mean, they did have that. Everybody in the U.S. was able to have a gun for the longest time. So, if they had passed say it's 1790, I forget the actual exact date that they ratified the Constitution, but it's those years following right after. They never went after that issue in that way, saying, "Oh no, we only meant to, guns to go to the militia." And if you read it, I mean, there's commas in there, and commas are tricky when you're reading. They can separate a thought, or you have to pay attention to the punctuation.
No.
I do not think that
commas aren't tricky at all.
Regulated militia is had to be a state militia, especially with the focus that our founding fathers had on checks and balances. They wouldn't want only centralized little things to have all the power. There were people in the the assortment of founding fathers that did want to centralize everything, but I don't think it has historically ever been interpreted that way, where it's only a militia can have guns. Everybody's been able to have guns, and it's because we have to have the ability to fight back, I think.
Understood. I'm sorry, what, Greg?
No, I was passing it on to you. It seemed you had you wanted to interject.
Okay, yeah. Two or three things. One, commas aren't tricky. They're part of standard language, and they don't separate thoughts or make them periods.
Not within logic and law. I mean, if law has to be precise, so does logic. So when you see a comma, any punctuation, it matters a lot.
Well,
that's what I'm saying, which is a comma doesn't separate out a thought. A comma means it's the opposite, which is the thing that comes before this comma is an integral part of what's coming afterwards. Because if it wasn't, it would be a period. So what I'm saying is, just because there's a comma as after a well-regulated militia being part of whatever the thing is, comma, that means that this next part is part of this first part. It's just a dependent clause. But what I'm saying is, all of that aside, these are people that were imagining government 200 and at this point, 40 or 50? I can't do the math in my head, but a very long time ago. And while we certainly, while the document that they created has lasted, it has lasted only because we were able to change it, only because it was flexible. It's the only reason why we've kept it.
Well, I think that might be because and I already know this is going to segue because there's two sides to this argument about the Constitution. Is the Constitution a flexible piece, or is the Constitution?
Absolutely, it is.
And who does the flexing? Who does the maneuvering of
all of us?
Who makes it flexible?
Well,
I don't think so. They gave us a way to change the Constitution. It is a living, breathing document. They gave us a way to do it, and that's to make an amendment. But the way that our government and the media have convinced us is the right way to do it now is through the courts, which is absurd. The courts should not be reinventing words or altering what we've known about a certain amendment for a long time. If people have a problem with an amendment the way it's written, make another amendment to nullify the previous amendment, so you have a new thing. I think that's the legitimate way to do it, instead of letting all the power rest in the hands of one judge or 9 judges. Well,
this kind of actually, and this might even segue it into maybe something that we can talk about in a future episode. But being able, I follow a lot of strict libertarians, almost to anarchists. Well, actually, some of them are anarchists, and the viewpoint that they take on is let the free market sort it out. And so my response to that is always, if we let the free market sort everything out, we'd end up with a whole lot of dead black people, and it would all be just justifiable because we didn't get around. Government wasn't able to step in and create a tamper on that. So I think to the amendment point is that the reason why, I mean, historically, not just like this isn't just a recent thing. Historically, the Supreme Court has always interpreted that's their job, is to interpret it. And I think now it's getting to a point where if you stretch out that whole timeline, the definitions have kind of evolved to now, but I think as time goes on, it is just a further clarification to kind of bring things up to speed.
And my point is if we didn't have that, it would have broken a long time ago. Yes, it's flexible. Maybe it's way too flexible, and I can't argue that point. And there's certainly a lot of people that disagree with it, but we're talking about men who had a really great idea. They are not gods. They are not magical. They're people that lived a long time ago, and they started a really good thing, but they also forgot to say, well, hey, why don't we not, to every person that says, well, the Founding Fathers, they gave us these rights. Yeah, they also gave us the right to own black people, right? So I'm saying that we cannot enshrine them in this untouchable view of everything that is perfect, because it wasn't perfect. But they knew that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and they knew that. And they set up the system to give us the flexibility to always sort of make our thing. And yes, now we have a much stronger central federal government than we did back then. Certainly, John Adams would have hated, Obamacare. You know what I mean? Like these are things that we've changed, but they've changed because we have the political system that we deserve. That's a sad thing, and that backwards. That
the people deserve the government they get, so to speak.
Yeah, and if we wanted a better one, but the thing I say is, okay, well, now we're ready to handle this particular topic. We gotta basically undo the mental latches of the people that think, well, it's not our place to touch this. Well, yeah, it is our place because it's our government and we live here and we have the right to do it. And while I respect the Founding Fathers, I think they were very wise, and certainly they should be accessed as for wisdom and guidance. That they were not kings, they were not gods, they don't deserve some untouchable status.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is actually a good maybe like transition point. We've gone on for a while. This has been a lot of fun. Being able to when you go on Facebook, you have these anonymous, semi-anonymous, at least, faces of people who you can assign. Matt and we always joke about assigning ISBN numbers to our responses, and I think that having this type of this is exactly first episode, and I'm already achieving my master plan, and that is to have these conversations because here we are transitioning from gun control to now talking about the framers of the Constitution, and I would love to even go deeper into, I mean, these people owned people. So, at some point, when are our forefathers going to get Christopher Columbus? In that, there was a lot of really shitty things that were they weren't even perceived to be shitty, kind of thing, and to where we are now. Talk about definition change, over time. So, with that, I know you guys are riling and you probably want to keep going, but I'm gonna have to cut you off. That being said, you guys have been awesome, amazing guests. I really do appreciate the outlook, and I'm actually quite surprised at the actual outcome, especially toward the end of the show. The outcome of it's not even that cop out of agree to disagree. Like it didn't even come to that. We actually got to some really cool conclusions today.
So some agreements.
What's that?
Actual agreements.
Yeah. What's going on here? All right, let's turn this off. End of the world. Hell is frozen. It's feeling a little cold right now. But cool. So I invite you guys to come on to any of the future shows. You get that like gold card inaugural membership.
There it is.
I'm really looking forward to kind of expanding this conversation. If anybody here is listening to this or watching this, and you stayed the course and listened to the whole thing, we do invite you to come on. I am doing this every Wednesday at 7 p.m. We record live, technical abilities permitting. And you can go ahead and for right now just subscribe to me. It's actually just under my name, Greg Daniels. You can subscribe there, get the updates, or just follow my posts on Facebook. We're always looking for some new topics, some things to talk about. Before this, I scoured Matt's and Brian's Facebook feed to kind of see what they've been talking about, what the conversations have been going. Threw in some surprises there, so if you plan on being on the show, just know that I am watching. Yeah, send your topics. Tune in next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. every Wednesday. How many more times can I say to end this show? Thank you all for joining. I'll see you guys next week.
Nice meeting you, Brian.
Hey, nice meeting you, Matt. Next time.